This is a companion video to my video about the movie. As I have just reviewed the movie, I may leave out a few things in this review that I've already discussed in the review of the film adaptation of this manga. Anyway, on with the review. At the end of the manga, Suzu and Hojo adopt a young girl orphaned from the destruction in Hiroshima. Throughout the manga, Suzu had been trying to get pregnant, but was unable to. In a conversation with Rin and Suzu discuss the prospect of having children. Suzu is told that she will have to have a boy at some point, as a boy is needed to be the heir of the family. This is not only an expectation, but almost practically a requirement put forth by society at the time, that a woman must have children and must have a boy. Like how Suzu lost her hand, making it difficult for her to fulfill her other expectations in taking care of the house, she is unable to have a child. The end of the manga is a complete rejection of social expectations. Suzu adopts a child instead of having her own. She takes in a child because she wants to. That child is a girl too, and therefore, by the standards set forth, she is ineligible to be an heir. But Suzu doesn't even think about that. Suzu has never been able to make decisions for herself in the manga. Her parents accepted her marriage without consulting her, and throughout the story she is confronted with external factors outside of her control dictating her life, whether that comes from the war itself or the effects of that war. When she adopts that child, it is a conscious decision. Even when her family is put off by the fact that the child is covered in lice, Suzu doesn't fret at all. She takes on the responsibility of that decision because she got to make that decision. Yet this choice she got to make herself was not selfish. In fact, taking care of another human being is one of the most selfless acts that can be committed. Hojo still agrees to this choice, but in the end, the family has to passively go along with it like Suzu had to do with everything they had put on her. Suzu, before this point, had taken a mostly passive way through life. She did not heavily rebel against her marriage or any other subsequent happenings. For one, she was not given any chance to. Her parents never let her say no, and she was never able to fight for her country. She wasn't in a position to run away or do anything. Instead, she has to live through each day of life, somehow trying to preserve who she really is through smaller acts, like enjoying cooking or pushing her husband away if she doesn't feel like talking to him. At the same time, during moments where she does have an opportunity to rebel, she doesn't, like in her interaction with Tetsu. She does this because she doesn't want to, in her view, sink to the same lows as her husband. I guess if we really push this, then her not committing an act of rebellion was in fact her committing an act of rebellion. Now I want to get into how this manga depicted the war from Japan's perspective. At one point in the manga, as the war rages on, Susie's mother-in-law talks about the problems they used to have. She remarks that she wished she was still dealing with those problems. The next panel depicts a flagpole waving the flag of Japan towering above them. This simple visual captures how small the life of a civilian was due to the wave of nationalism Japan was under at that time, and how much power the military had over every aspect of life. Because of the acts of this empire, the people had to suffer. They never had control. Neither did the military have control. In their eyes, the situation was going to work out for them. Instead, it brought the United States straight to its homeland, causing large losses of life and ending the empire of Japan. Another visual I found interesting was when, after the war ended, Suzu runs away from the house in tears. She has a hard time accepting that her country has lost the conflict. However, she comes to the realization that the Empire of Japan was after violence as well, and she wishes to herself that she never had to know that. The visual of the flag of Korea is shown. This attack on Japan's role in the war is more biting than the movie. It directly blames the Empire of Japan for this situation and derides it for its violent expansion. The flag of Korea is an interesting touch as well, because it was the people of Korea that may have had to suffer the most under the Empire of Japan, after being annexed in 1910 and forced into subjugation until the war's end. I find it really powerful that this work brings this up, and not only that, but it connects and weaves it into the story of Suzu, who has to let go of the old Japan and continue her life. She gives up on violence after seeing it as what her country has done as well, and she doesn't stoop down to that low. Somehow her kindness and compassion become her main tools of rebellion. In the manga, Rin has a much larger role in the story. Suzu returns to the red light district to give her completed drawing to Rin. Not to mention, there's a whole segment where Suzu draws a picture in the snow for another girl at the red light district suffering from pneumonia. The girl had gotten involved in a suicide with one of her customers, a sailor returning from the sea, suffering from what he had seen in the war. The river, however, was too shallow to drown them. The sailor survived, but the girl would later succumb to her illness. It is a haunting and interesting part of the manga, one that explores how actions have reverberating and unintended consequences. The sailor survived, but she didn't. She never called the sailor a bad person, though, but a deeply troubled man. But his actions led to her death. But why was he like that in the first place? It traces back again to the war. Outside of that, the animated movie frames and tells the story almost exactly like the manga. It is very interesting. I'm glad they did that and kept the art style. So the movie flows just like the manga. I really like the art style of this book. When it switches to color, you know that the visual is important and meaningful. Every line seems to be drawn with love, and I think the book sets up what it was after, which is to depict the everyday lives of people living in Japan at the time. This is set up too in some really interesting segments depicting the nationalistic playing cards of children and all of the citizens relaying their problems to Kaiko. Wide ranges of perspectives are given, including notes from people asking to end the war by joining in prayer, to kids having issues with teachers playing favorites. This gives the manga a very human perspective, making it easier to relate to and understand, and showing the perseverance of our humanity, even in war. We never cease being human, human being flawed, and always dealing with one problem or another, but somehow we go on living anyway.